can get a smaller car or get rid of your car and start cycling, and you can go to the bottle bank and recycle all your plastic milk bottles. But that's fine. But we need a new energy source for civilization. We've got to stop burning forests down, we've got to stop burning fossil fuels. Well, I've been thinking about this since the early 90s, to be very honest. Ever since, it's amazing to think how far back it goes, but my children used to come back with, from primary school, with artwork they'd done on greenhouse gases. So this has been around a very long time. And I always thought it was the most intractable subject for a novel, so impacted with science, statistics, and more importantly, with a sort of moral load that was going to make a novel a very uncomfortable form for it. And then I spent a week up on the Arctic Circle with a group of climate scientists and artists on a ship frozen into a field north of Longyearbyen. The idea, as a group called Cape Farewell, the idea was to get scientists and artists in a conversation about climate change and to see some of it for ourselves. You know, glaciers carving away into fields. And what I noticed during the week was this room under the wheelhouse where we had to take off all our sort of snowmobile suits and gears and masks and balaclavas and gloves was slowly descending into the most extraordinary chaos. And the discrepancy, the gap that opened up between what we wanted to do to the whole Earth below us and the way we couldn't manage these rooms of 8 by 10 next door suggested to me that really the way into this subject was about human nature. That this really posed such a problem for human nature. And that's where I left it. I mean, I thought somehow in there, there is a form of comedy in the broadest sense. And then I went to Potsdam for a climate change conference. All the speakers were Nobel Prize winners. There must have been about 30 of them. Now, I've run into Nobel Prize winners in the form of, you know, mild-mannered Seamus Heaney and rather shy Kurt Sear and merry Derek Walcott, but I've never met the impacted grandeur of 30 physicists and economists in one place. And it was very impressive and again, rather funny. I mean, these people wore their reputations that it was like a great cloud of importance over each one of them. They were very, very important, grand. And it's at that point I decided, well, whoever is at the centre of this novel gets a Nobel Prize. I'm giving him one now. Well, Michael Beard's a physicist. He's a man of a certain age, fat, balding, short, clever, compulsive womanizer, with a series of marriages behind him. Solar is really the story of how this man comes by a whole set of new ideas, embraces climate change activism as a physicist, partly for his own ends and glorification, and how the chaos of his life and the dubious nature of his own professional conduct collide into a collapse of all his dreams. And those dreams centre around artificial photosynthesis, the near free splitting of water into hydrogen and oxygen, and how it all falls apart. You know what I always think, Professor Beard? If an alien arrived on Earth and saw all this sunlight, he'd be amazed to hear that we think we've got an energy problem. Photovoltaics. I read Einstein on it. I've read you. The conflation is brilliant. And God's greatest gift to us is surely this, that a photon striking a semiconductor releases an electron. The laws of physics are so benign, so generous. And get this, there's a guy in a forest in the rain and he's dying of thirst. He has an axe and he starts cutting the trees down to drink the sap, a mouthful in each tree. All around him is a wasteland, no wildlife, and he knows that thanks to him, the forest is disappearing fast. So why doesn't he just open his mouth and drink the rain? Because he's brilliant at chopping down trees. He's always done things this way, and he thinks that people who advocate rain drinking are weird. That rain is our sunlight, Professor Beard. It drenches our planet, drives our climate and its life. A sweet rain of photons. And all we have to do is hold out our cups. It's very difficult as a novelist if you put an unsympathetic fellow at the heart of a novel and expect your reader to travel with him for 100,000 words. It's hard to keep the reader's interest and sympathy without a degree of almost farce. So for that reason I've decided to make this, in certain points at least, a comedy of failure, of the discrepancy between idealism and what happens on the ground.
Where do you stand on climate change? You've clearly read loads on it, you know lots about it.
Well, I think it's happening. I think it's anthropogenic. I was persuaded of a calamitous view for a while, but I now think that there are some imponderables about rates and speeds. I mean, and whether we're looking at 2.5 degrees or 4 or 5 degrees is still open to us, and I think that climate science is still young, but my sense of being immersed in the data for 3 years persuaded me completely that the data collection, the satellite data, generally I think in science, when you get confirmation of a phenomenon from so many different fields, glaciology, oceanography, atmospherics, when they're all pointing in the same direction, working from different premises and in different areas of study, when you're getting that degree of consilience, then I think you have to take it extremely seriously. I dug around for a good while thinking what would be a technology that was a good way off but plausible enough, exciting enough, and looked at various things, and solar energy has about it, I think, something rather dramatic. Finally I stumbled across the work being done around the world in artificial photosynthesis to reproduce phase 1 of photosynthesis, that point at which sunlight splits using chlorophyll water into its constituent gases, and the dream of doing that cheaply. And that seemed just dreamy enough for Michael Beard's purposes. This poses particular problems for our nature. We're being asked to do favours for people we'll never meet. I mean, unborn people. Now, we usually do favours for people who return them. I mean, that's our instinct for favours. We live in a world of trade and reciprocal acts. This requires a scale of long-term thinking that lies outside our biology. So it's a particularly interesting challenge for us. So what am I doing? I'm investigating the problem. I'm not persuading anyone of anything, but I'm hoping to take a reader on that journey of what it means actually for us, how uniquely difficult this is for us, and how our cleverness might win through.